So I've been on vacation for a little over, well, just about a week now, but I've done very little riding at all. The weather has been complete shit, and some of the days I was just not around to go riding anyway. So taking advantage of today and taking one of my more longer trips that I do, it's about 300 miles total, and I figured it'd be a good time to do another video at least, because it's been a while since I've done one. I think one of the most common topics that I see on the internet, on the forums that I'm on, and not just the main site that I post to, but on a couple of different sites that I've been to over the years, the topic of should you start out on a 600cc Supersport for your first motorcycle comes up quite a bit. That being this bike in particular, 600cc Honda or Suzuki, Kawasaki, anything like that. A lot of people tend to see it as a starting point for riding, but the general consensus is that it is not. So you get a lot of new riders that come onto the websites and asking, should I get a CBR 600RR as my first bike? And fortunately there's a straightforward answer for this, and the simple answer is no, yes, and depends. I know it's kind of a loaded answer, but it's also a loaded question all at the same time. There really is no simple answer to give for that. It's all situational, and it all depends on a lot of contributing factors as well. But I'll start out with the main reason for why people do not recommend starting out on a bike like this as your first bike. For one thing, any Supersport bike, a 600cc class, is a very unforgiving bike. It's not meant to be a bike where you can make mistakes on it and you won't pay the price for it. It's got a very, very reactive throttle. You hit the throttle and it goes, you hit the brakes and it stops hard, and all these contributing factors, clumped into one, make it so that it's not a very good bike to start riding on. You start on something like a 250 Ninja or a 500 Ninja or something, in that class or that size of a bike, and you're going to find that the bike is a lot more forgiving. You hit the throttle, it doesn't have nowhere near the kind of power that something like this has. It doesn't have the top speed, doesn't have the acceleration. You can chop the throttle and you won't have the repercussions as you would on something like this. Once you've been riding for a while and you know what this type of bike is capable of and what it will do, you will know what to expect if a situation happens and you happen to make a mistake or need to make a correction. You know how the bike's going to act for the most part. But as far as being a new rider, it's probably not the best situation that you want to be in overall. That's real nice. Blinker turning right, then he goes left. Fucking douchebag. A lot of people like to take past riding experience and contribute it towards why they could start out on something like this. If you do start out on a smaller bike, like a 250 or a 500, and you ride it for a while and get to understand the bike and what riding's like, then it's perfectly fine. But a lot of people like to take dirt bikes and say, well, I rode dirt bikes for like 2 years and I should be able to jump on a 600cc Supersport and have no problems at all. But you can't really relate dirt bike riding to sport bikes or street riding. It's a completely different animal, and it's not quite the same thing at all. But a lot of people like to try to use that reasoning for why they can jump on something like this right from the very start. I also think that there's two types of riders that will really get on new riders who wanted to start out on a bike like this. And those two types are the ones that generally understand that you really should start on something smaller and work your way up to it. And there's also those that don't think that other riders are capable of getting on a bike like this at the start and being able to successfully handle it and ride it and learn on it as a first bike, because they think, well, I didn't start out on a 600cc, therefore you can't either. But it doesn't work like that either. I mean, there's different riders have different riding abilities from the very start, so you can't clump everyone into the same category either. That pretty much covers the no aspect of why you shouldn't start on one. There's a lot of factors and a lot of things to learn when you're a new rider. You really need to take it slower. You really need to start out on something that is more forgiving and not have the kind of power that this bike has or another type of bike like it, and you need to work your way up to it. Yeah, but there's also the situation of, you know, those that do start out on a bike like this, or ones that can, and there's reasons for why they do that too. For one, I'm one of those people that did start out on a 600cc. My first one was an 05, and I mean, I can't say I knew what the bike was before I got into it, but I understood what the bike was capable of and what it can do. And I'm going to take the depends in the yes category and kind of put it together into the same thing, because they're both closely related. The reason why it depends is because if you can understand what this bike is really like, I've had a lot of fast cars over the years that I've had built or I built myself, and I've have a lot of friends that have had fast cars. I understand what speed and power is like. I understand the respect that it has to be given. And if you're getting into a bike like this because you want to be a show-off and do all kinds of stunts and go as fast as you can all the time, this is the reason for why to start out on a bike like this. But I started out on a bike like this because I knew that I would not be a retard with it. I knew what the bike was capable of, and I knew that if I just took my time and learned the bike, that I would eventually, you know, improve my skills as a rider on my own, while all at the same time getting used to the bike as well. And I've had 2 CBRs up to this point, and I'm getting close to about 20,000 miles of total riding between both bikes. To some people that's a lot, but in the aspect of overall riding, it's not a lot at all, at least not in my opinion anyway. So with that being said, you know, I think I have a pretty good grasp of riding. I think I'm a good rider, I'm a responsible rider, and I know what bikes like this can actually do. And it's important that you keep that in mind, because the moment that you forget that and you think that you control the bike, that's when bad things will happen at that point. You always have to remember that the bike is in control of you. You can only control the bike up to your riding ability. The bike is always going to have an advantage over you as a rider for what it is capable of. Anyone that says that I need to ride a 1000 RR or a 1000cc sport bike because a 600 isn't fast enough on the street is a total idiot. That goes for everyone that has ever said that, because there's probably no riders out there that are going to ride a 600cc Supersport to its max ability on public streets. It's just not possible. So to say that you need a 1000 in order to be a better rider is complete crap. That's not true at all. There are people that prefer 1000s, and that's fine if you want the added throttle response or the faster acceleration. Like if you do a lot of highway driving, you need to get out of certain situations faster than another bike would be able to get you out of, and that's understandable. But you also have to understand where your limits start and where they stop, because the bike is always going to exceed that, and that's something you always have to keep in mind. And if you have that mindset going in when you want to start out on a 600cc sport bike, then you're going to be a lot better off than going in thinking, I'm going to, you know, take this thing and ride the rails off it and do all kinds of stunts and show off in front of everyone and look like a douchebag in the end, because, you know, those are the people that end up crashing and don't improve their skills at all, because they don't care about the riding aspect. They just care about the overall look of how they look on the bike and the flash and all that stuff about it's the perception that they give off more so than the ability that they learn while they're riding. If I could go back and do it all over again, would I start out on this or would I have started on something different? It's really hard to say because I've really enjoyed this type of bike since I've owned it. I know the bike extremely well, considering I've owned two that are exactly the same. And you know, it's hard. I mean, I've ridden other bikes before and they feel so different compared to this, because I mean, you wouldn't think that motorcycles will differ that much from different models and everything, but they really do quite a bit. I've ridden on an R6 before and my neighbor's SV650, and it's so much different than what this bike is like. But there are other bikes I'm definitely interested in, but it's hard to say overall if I would have rather started on something small and worked my way up to it, because I've done fine, you know, on this type of bike so far. I didn't find that starting out on the 600 was all that difficult for the most part. I just really took my time. I was very respectful of the bike. I'm still respectful of it, but when I was a lot newer rider, you know, I took it really easy. I mean, I had zero riding experience at all. I had never been on a dirt bike other than riding bicycles. That was the extent of my riding on two wheels. And then I go and buy a 600 RR as my first bike, and I just learned to ride it. I remember taking the bike home. I brought it home in my truck. I put it in the garage, and I'm like, well, I got a brand new bike. It's either going to sit here and I'm going to look at it, or I'm going to take it out and learn how to ride it. And I took it out, and I just really took my time, and I rode around some real country settings. You know, where I lived at the time was out in the woods, so a lot of the roads around me were not very well populated and there was not a lot of traffic, so I mostly took it out in that area first until I understood, you know, a little bit more what the bike was like. And once I got more used to it, then I was more comfortable taking it out on public streets and, you know, areas more like this where there's a lot more traffic and a lot more of a population of cars to deal with. So if you're faced with a decision of buying a motorcycle and you want to start out on something like this and you're not sure if you really should or not, you know, it's one of those things where you just have to do some soul searching. If you know you're a responsible rider and you know that you're going to respect the bike, then there's nothing wrong with starting out on something like this. But there's a very large part of the riding population for newer riders that are looking to get into the sport that have no business at all getting on something like this as their first bike, and they really shouldn't. But the question isn't a simple yes or no. As you can see, there's a lot of variables and a lot of factors that come into it. So it's one of those decisions you really have to make on your own for what kind of rider you know that you are. So hopefully you're able to take a little bit of something out of this and, you know, put it towards your particular situation if it's something that you're thinking about getting into, or if you just generally stumble across the video and wanted to watch it. Either way, I hope it was informative and helpful in whatever way possible. But thanks for watching. I will catch everyone later. See ya.